I'm flabbergasted that so many people are telling me if you take 4 workers away from the start, this goes from their favorite game to their least favorite game. All right. What's going on, everybody? We've been playing a bunch of games on the new PTR, the Public Test Realm, with the crazy new patch for StarCraft 2. And it's really interesting. I would say right now, the economy changes I quite like. The mineral changes are a little bit different to what I suggested, but I'm enjoying them so far. Low worker count, I'm enjoying. There's a few quality of life changes that are good. There's a lot of bugs. There's a lot of really, really ridiculous bugs right now as well, which I think we'll do a video probably tomorrow going through them. At the moment, there is some insanity with bugs, which are just so ridiculous, but they'll no doubt get fixed. I think at the moment, the big problem that we have is obviously it's hard to test things for Protoss players because the warp gate changes are kind of insane. For some reason, you have to make warp gate off a gateway instead of a cyber core, which means if you want to make warp gate straight away, your gateway is just not able to build fighting units. So it's really messing with Protoss openings. You've also already got what feels like an overall nerf to Protoss, because even though warp gate does speed up gateway production, it's so hard to get to. Then transforming to warp gate costs a ton of money. There's just a lot of trade-offs going on here without any really commensurate buffs to Protoss, and as a result, Protoss players are quite frustrated, understandably, and I hope we see this get a bit more baked and figured out over the next few days, because it doesn't feel like these warp gate changes were fully cooked going in. Even though these changes are interesting, I think I really want to focus on the economy changes, because this is, I think, the biggest game-changing thing that completely changes the flow of the game, and I wanted to cover 2 of the most important talking points and pieces of, I would say, resistance to the economy changes specifically that I think are maybe misguided in some ways, maybe exaggerated is a better word. They're definitely worth talking about. So let's go into it. So first of all, the big one I got on my economy video was people saying, I will leave the game. This feels like all my hard work and builds will be invalidated. There's a few people who said, I'm GM, I worked so hard to get here. If this goes through, all my build orders are ruined. They're down the drain. I feel like all my hard work is thrown in the bin. And that's just really disgusting to me. And there's quite a few people who've said things like, this just changes the start. I don't want to relearn the start. And that sucks. And I actually believe that's 100% true in that it will create an off-ramp, right? Anytime you go back to a game or you're playing a game you played for years and something fundamentally changes and you have to relearn it, it's a little bit of resistance you got to push through when you weren't necessarily wanting to do that. And some people would just go, F this, not playing anymore. And that's totally fine. I think, though, people saying all my hard work and builds will be invalidated is a big exaggeration. So let me explain. People don't seem to realize that, I'd say 99%, you could argue 95, maybe 97, a vast amount of your skill carries over to any change like this. That doesn't feel immediately apparent, because if there's something that disrupts you in the early game and throws off your early flow or builds, it can often feel like nothing's working in StarCraft, and then you get hit by an adept and you're not ready for it and your supply block, you're like, ah! Because your immediate results might dip very suddenly for 5 games while you're figuring out the new openings and just getting some basics down in the openings. If you're not willing to open a custom game and figure out the very beginning supplies of when you want to go hatchery or gateway or nexus or barracks, it can be a little overwhelming at first. And if you're not kind of prepared for that, it can feel like, oh my god, I'm a garbage player now. Like, what the hell happened? But you got to realize most of StarCraft is micro, it's macro, it's multitasking, it's knowing when to build the units, what units to counter what, how to interact, how to move around the map. That does not change. That skill is still right there. So I get it can be annoying trying to push through the resistance of learning new builds. That's hard for some people. Some people don't want to do it. That's totally fair. Just keep in mind, it is not going to invalidate all your hard work. Most of your skill will carry over. That being said, it does break up builds. It forces you to relearn opening timings. It disrupts your muscle memory and established patterns, and it's annoying for some people, so fair enough. It also, though, breaks up the meta, so it makes all the games much more unique during the relearning period. And this, to some extent, even happens whenever there's a big patch or balance patch in a game. Even without changing the economy, people go, oh, now everyone's going battle cruisers. Now I've got to shift my build in this way or that way. Don't get me wrong. Changing when you build your first Overlord or Depot or Nexus is a bit more of a fundamental change that affects all builds. But it's kind of similar in that players will adapt very, very quickly to this. And I think give yourself more credit, especially if you're a GM player. You will still be a GM player with these changes. That's not going to change. Pig, I appreciate this. I think people are going to have to accept, no matter how many arguments there is, a large portion of the player base love the 12 worker start and are regardless just going to leave. And they can do that. That's fine. That's up to them. No one's arguing against that. If you want to leave because you don't like the worker start, then leave. I don't mean to be aggressive about it, but I've had people saying this to me all day, PokeGamer, and it's fair. Dude, some people left when there was a void. Most Zerg high-level players stopped playing the game completely after 2019, 2020 because there was void rays for 2 years. And that's going to happen. It happens. I'm not going to convince you. I'm not going to try to convince you. I'm just explaining things logically. I am not the guy who made these changes happen. Did I talk about them along with a ton of other people who supported them? Yes. That's it. I'm not going to, if you don't like it, you don't like it. But I think people go, we like the 12 worker change. We're going to quit. And people keep spamming this with me today. And I go, why? Do you not love StarCraft? This is still StarCraft. And people go, well, I don't want to spend 5 minutes doing nothing at the start of the game. Well, that's the next point. People keep saying it slows down the game. There's more minutes and nothing happens. It increases the most boring part of the game. I've just spent 20 minutes looking through all my replays from today. They're scuffed games. The builds are shit. The players are shit. But even in all of the games, what have we seen? We've seen, was it Yes? This game? Thermal does a Reaper harassment. It gets to my base 20 seconds later than in a normal game. Is 6 Hellions and Banshee come in 30 seconds? At most 40 seconds later than they normally would? And we're interacting the whole time. It's not, what has changed about this that makes you go from loving this game to hating this game? If I sound a little bit hurt, I'm flabbergasted that so many people are telling me, if you take 4 workers away from the start, this goes from their favorite game to their least favorite game. I get people are maybe just trying to get a reaction. They're saying, well, we just want to let you know we don't like the thing. We want to express that, so hopefully it doesn't go through. That's fair. Just please stop spamming me. I'm going to stop playing the game. It's just, to me, it's still the same game at its core, and it nudges things in a different direction. And I just don't think it's worth you going from I love StarCraft to I hate StarCraft. If it went to 16 workers, I'd still be playing the game tomorrow. If you go to 6 workers, I'd still be playing the game tomorrow. Unless you completely ruin the game, I'm not going to be moving off. Maybe you will. I'm sure, like I said, some people will go off. But I've been streaming all day today, and I guess there's just been so many comments of people like, nah, terrible, never playing it. And I'm like, have you guys not played it? It's really fun. My lived experience of playing 8 worker starts is it's very fun. I have enjoyed it. The games have been interactive and fun. Will it be perfect? Of course not. There's never been a perfect patch. I don't know if you guys know about David Kim. There used to be a guy on Twitter called David Kim. Not the balance guy for StarCraft 2. This guy had to change his Twitter profile to say, I'm not the balance guy. Please stop sending me hate. That's how people would go on Twitter. They'd just at a random David Kim and be like, why do force fields exist? We hate you. And this guy, just a random dude, his name was David Kim. Every day he's dealing with people going, fuck you, man. There's a lot of people now going, bring back David Kim. That was the golden age of balance. At the time, everyone said, David Kim's the worst. We hate him. My point is, it's StarCraft is still StarCraft, baby. I just think we should steer away from too many absolutes. There's going to be people who don't like changes and pop off the game. There's going to be some people who come back. I overwhelmingly have been hit by positivity. A lot of players saying, I only watch and don't play anymore. I'd actually be interested in coming back. Will they really, though? Not necessarily. I think a lot of the players who say they're going to leave aren't going to leave. I think a lot of the people who say they're going to come back probably aren't going to come back. A lot of people just talk, right? A lot of people say things, you know? A lot of people say things, and that's fine. At its core, though, so this Reaper hit about 20 seconds later than a normal Reaper. Now, admittedly, he built it one supply early and outside his base, so maybe it's like 35 seconds delayed from a normal Reaper. And don't get me wrong, I thought I was playing a Platinum player, and it was about this point in this game where I realized this guy was pretty good at StarCraft. My chat I wasn't looking at because I was trying to learn the 8 worker start, and I didn't see them telling me, this is you, Thermal, watch out, pig. This is you, Thermal. I sent a second drone across because I thought I was playing a Platinum player. It wasn't a good idea. Point being, game fast forwards, bit more interaction. Here goes Heli and Banshee with a natural wall off. I take a third hatchery. I get massively supply blocked. I've already lost an Overlord. And he comes over and 5 minutes 25 arrives at my base, about 5:25 with 6 Hellions, a Reaper, and then the Banshee comes in as well. And this just, 5.5 minutes, this normally hits at what? 6 Hellions and a Banshee, 4:45? I guess that's maybe off a 3cc. The difference is, he's not got a third command set. Like, it is slowing down him getting to 3 or 4 bases. Don't get me wrong, we are like making more choices about, do I want to squeeze an early third in? Or do I want to go aggressive? Do I want to build a pack of Zerglings? Or do I want to go for the Roach? Like, you are slowed down in terms of you have a bit less money. And if you're interacting with the opponent, both of you are going to be building army to fight earlier, which means less building economy. Now, here's the dichotomy. As I get absolutely roasted by Euthermal in this game, here is the dichotomy that I keep getting, is people keep saying nothing's happening. Explain to me how in a game where there are more extreme cheese and more extreme greedy builds, and you are encouraged to go and scout and harass and react and interact with the opponent, because scouting a 3 command center gasless, I need to either all in that in this version, or I need to be greedy myself. If I scout a guy going 3 barracks before expand, I gotta make a ton of army. It is so much more important in this lower worker start to work a scout or send an early zergling or to do an early pool or aggression yourself. And what that does is it speeds up the aggression and the fighting and the interaction, because you're constantly trying to harass and figure out what the other guy's doing and keep them tabs on them, because the extremes are there. If you want to play a solid way of playing on an 8 worker start, you actually should be interacting with the opponent more frequently to ensure they aren't going extreme greed or extreme aggression. And that's what's been playing out in my game. So don't get me wrong, what's slowed down is getting to 3 to 4 bases, getting to 5 bases, getting to max supply. And if that's all you want to play StarCraft for, I do think this is not a change you will like. I do believe that. I do believe if you love late game and you love the 200 supply standoffs, and you like motherships and tempests and oracles up against broodlords and vipers and spores picking at each other, you probably do enjoy 12 workers and fundamentally should enjoy it a lot more. I am very upfront, I do not enjoy StarCraft 2 late game at max supply. I think it's a boring standoff. And I think for me, the best way to play it is exemplified by this. I just looked this up 2 years ago. Cyril versus Classic 50,000 resource bank hour-and-a-half video, where Cyril is playing the most perfect ZVP you've ever seen. And him and Classic have done this multiple times now, because they're both very good late game players. They're both playing very correct StarCraft, where they end up with 50,000 resources combined in the bank. And Cyril's like sandpapering him off the edges. And I like watching this. I appreciate the skill. Not the biggest fan of playing it myself. Not the biggest fan in general of exactly this style. So it's up to you. If you love this version of StarCraft with 50,000 resources and the players kind of sitting there slowly picking at each other, then that's up to you. Sorry, I shouldn't have gone to for 4K. It's a bit high res, I guess. But these games were going like, they just kept going and going and going. Like this game went for a very long time. Let's zoom forward in this game. I think it was like a 45-minute game. And don't get me wrong, these are very fun in their own way. I hate playing them. I do enjoy watching Cyril play them. Most pro gamers refuse to even go to this stage, right? Like Zerg players, because there's like a bit of imbalance where it's a bit easier to use the Protoss late game army, or it should technically play a bit better unless you're playing Cyril. So they just all in before they get to this point, because they don't want to get to that stage. I don't like the late game that much. I think it's a little boring. I think it's very standoffishy. I think the max supply is too big of a part of the gameplay, where players are just banking resources and just like very slowly looking for efficient trades. I prefer a bit more movement. I prefer a bit more fighting for expansions, fighting for the right to expand. There being a bit more choice about it. And I really like when the mid game, the 80 to 150 supply part of the game is drawn out and extended rather than speed ran past, which often happens so much in the current version of the game. So when people are telling me, well, I don't like watching the current version because nothing's happening, I wonder if they think this is the version of the game where everything is happening. I wonder, is this the version of the game that you want every game to look like? Because you're still going to get games like this with an 8 worker start. And you're still going to get games, you know, that are cheesy with a 12 worker start. It's not like one is all one way and one is all the other. But you're going to get a bit more range with the 8 worker start on the early game end of the spectrum, where there's more choices there to mess the game up and deny each other's expansions, and you're making more choices about going up the tech earlier on lower supply and countering each other's tech rather than just out expanding each other. So it's really interesting because, like I said, a lot of people keep saying this to me, and I wonder if for some people it's just they just don't think StarCraft begins until you have 150 supply on 4 base versus 4 base. I don't know if that's fair. I think everyone has different feelings, and a lot of people are coming at it from a point of just not having experienced it. And they have this idea in their head of Heart of the Swarm, the game's really slow, nothing's happening, the game goes on and on and on, and just nothing's going on. And I kind of look at it and I go, don't get me wrong, I have some memories of very boring Heart of the Swarm and Wings of Liberty games as well. There was some problematic metas in StarCraft 2. Oh my god, some problematic metas. Broodlord Infestor in Wings of Liberty, Swarmos in Heart of the Swarm, Raven Mech in Heart of the Swarm. Don't even remind me of the point defense drone. It would just block all projectiles. You just mass point defense drone and none of the Zerg things that shoot up could hit anything. There was a lot of problems in earlier versions of StarCraft 2. The 8-worker change does not revert to those problems. There is no mothership core with Nexus cannon. There is no point defense drone. You know, there's all these problematic metas. The old Swarmos that just burrows and just sends an endless stream of locusts is no longer there. So I think for some people who have tried it and tested it and honestly still feel they don't like it, I think they might be wanting a more Battle Aces experience, speed past the macros, speed past the build orders. Let's have big armies fighting and just interact on those tech switches and the micro and those interactions and those tactics, which is a very valid type of RTS. It is really cool. It's kind of beyond RTS. Some call it fast action RTS, not a real RTS, some would say. I would say Age of Empires 2 on the macro single player quotient end of the spectrum, lots of time managing your base and your economy and your build with moments of heavy interaction that builds up to the late game where it's near constant interaction. And then you've got StarCraft 2, which is like speed through the macro, 12-worker start fighting, get into, and it's very interactive and stuff like that, right? StarCraft 1, also very interactive, builds up way slower, only a 4-worker start. It builds up from that wrestling match to that giant war much more steadily, and most of StarCraft 1 Brood War exists in that kind of 2-base, 3-base, and even 1-base stage, right? It's a wrestling match to get each expansion up. StarCraft 2 speedruns past that. It's on the Battle Aces end of the spectrum where it's like, well, no, we're on 4 bases, now we really start battling, if that makes sense. That being said, as much as it's on that end of the spectrum, going 8 workers doesn't bring it that much further back. It nudges it back a little bit, but not all that much. You've still got lava injects, mills, chrono boosts. So you've still got these macro mechanics that speed things up very quickly. You've still got a lot of things pushing your economy forward in that regard. 8 workers is also not that far off 12 workers. So even if you are just playing macro, you build 4 workers in a row to go from 8 to 12, Protoss or Terran takes 12 seconds to build a worker. It's 48 seconds. In 48 seconds, you are at a 12-worker start. So even if you are playing the exact same styles, if there's no strategic range, 8 pool doesn't exist, Nexus first or 3 hatch before pool, these extreme builds don't exist, and all this stuff I've said about variants, even if you don't believe any of that, the game is at most delayed by 1 minute if you're both just not interacting. And what's really delayed is getting up extra expansions and getting giant armies on the field. And that is absolutely delayed. And if you want to rush to giant armies, that is definitely delayed. And that is a really big thing for some people who want to rush to that part of the game. But the interactions, the harassments, are actually more impactful. And they should be happening a little more frequently and be rewarded. And the tech switches especially can force bigger reactions or hit earlier compared to where the players are built up to. And for me, I think that's a pretty big positive. At the end of the day, you'd be surprised how similar it is to the current version. I think there's people who are saying, this is just going to be boring and nothing happening. I think you'd be surprised how close the pacing is in terms of getting those extra workers up to close the gap is compared to the modern version. I think for the people saying the game is going to reward cheeses and nothing else, and people are just going to coin flip and cheese, I think 8 workers is not 6 workers. There's a lot more tools. Don't get me wrong, scouting is encouraged. I think if you play blind expands, no scout, and you refuse to adapt in worker scout or go for a pool first or a barracks first or a gate first, and go for some early units, or go for a worker scout, which I think could be heavily advised, you will probably go, this is a very cheesy patch. I don't like it. This is a cheesy patch. It's not fun for me. I don't like it. It's shitty. But if you scout early and you react to things, I think you'd be shocked by how well you can actually deal with stuff. All right, guys. So anyway, besides being inundated with people saying, I'm going to quit the game, this is going to ruin everything, to summarize, I think we had a few interesting comments. So we had someone in the chat who said, I think people actually just don't like inconsistency, the ones that don't like this. And basically, no matter what, if you have more range in the early game, you have more choices, you have more adapting, you have more choices in terms of RNG. Do I gamble on the all-in? Do I gamble on the 8 pool? Do I gamble on proxy 3 racks or proxy 3 gate? Do I gamble on 3 hatch before pool? And some players love that, and they love that inconsistency. They love adapting. They love having lots of choices. And other people hate it. And is that really the main divide between the lower worker preference players like myself and the higher worker preference players like some of the people who've been spamming in my chat today? I don't know. I think it's totally fair to have your own preferences. I don't think there's a correct answer on this, but I hope this little discussion has kind of summed it up a bit. Someone said, it does feel bad to die to something that feels random. And this is where I went on a bit of a tangent, which I'm not too sure on, but let me lead you through it really quickly to finish up. I would kind of argue that because you're encouraged to scout and interact with the opponent more because of the more extreme options, you actually are more rewarded on lower worker starts for interacting and figuring out what's coming your way. And it's like a more integral part of the game is what's he doing? Ooh, he's doing this, I'll adapt my build around it. And for me, that's like the core of what I love in RTS games is like adapting your build to your opponent's build, which I feel just kicks in at a lower rate and a little later in the game with the 12 worker start. So in 12 worker start, I actually think there's more frustrating random things like the Ling Floods people go for. People just go for these big attacks without really scouting or reacting to anything you're doing. They just pick a build before the game starts and they just do it. There's so much picking builds at GM and just doing the build before the game starts and reacting to nothing. Even at very high level, there are players who lack basic scouting in GM at the moment, and that's part of what I dislike about the current meta, is there are players who are better than me, who are rewarded constantly, who have almost zero scouting abilities. And that annoys me in a strategy game. Subjective, but it annoys me. So there's like the fake hatchery, 13 hatch, 12, 11, gas 11 pool, pretend expand into 40 Ling Flood in ZVZ. And I was like, well, you need to insta-react. It's like there's so many all-ins like this where it's just, oh, here come Lings out of the fog. I need to just instantly pull my Hellions up my ramp, or I instantly need to pull my Queens to my ramp. Or, oh, there's a warp prism at my main and charge lots are warping, and oh my god, I need to quickly instantly react. There's so many holds that are mechanical rather than scouting-based, that are react really quickly and do X, Y, Z rather than anything else. And I feel like there'll be a little bit less of that, a bit more focus on sniffing things out ahead of time. That being said, there might be chances where you just can't sniff things out. Like I was thinking about ZVZ. Like what about with it, especially because they've slowed the Overlord down a lot. I'm really worried the Overlord's a bit too slow and that mirror matchups might be a bit too coin flippy, but I'm also not sure how to balance that. And I kind of wrote some notes here. I was being a bit sarcastic. I was like, oh no, mirror matchups might be a bit coin flippy. Everyone's favorite matchup. Like I put a mirror matchup on YouTube. It has like 1/8 of the viewership of a non-mirror matchup. Unless it's like Serral Rainer, no one watches it. On the ladder, there are so many people, even at GM, leaving all their TVTs, their ZVZs, their PvPs. But that shouldn't really be part of the argument. That's me being low-hanging fruit. So when I was writing this out and talking about it before, I think that was a bit dumb. But on a serious note, I do think mirrors might be a bit more coin flippy. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but I do think you'll see like the most extreme variance in like ZVZ, which might frustrate a lot of players. I think I'm okay with it as long as it still feels mostly skill-based. Like if we get to the point where like we see Serral versus a rank 100 Zerg, and it's like only 70-30 in Serral's favor, that's bad. I would say that's quite bad, right, guys? I just don't think it's going to be that extreme. I think Serral and most players can do a pool first opening, or they can send a drone scout and get there early enough to hatch block their opponent's hatchery like a probe normally does, and do their own hatch first and be similar economy. Or do a safe pool first, wait for the Overlord to get vision, have a little bit more safety baked. I think there are decisions players will be able to make, but we need pro gamers to test this stuff. So that's where the fear really lies with lower worker starts, is like too many coin flips, too much randomness in early game build orders, like 4-player maps as well and stuff like that. Some players would argue it'll make Serral even more broken because he's good at preparing for his opponents, guessing their builds, studying their openings, and figuring out how to like toe the line of safety and greed. But obviously there is still a bit up in the air about how it'll map out long term. But I just really wanted to have this discussion because I think these comments slows down the game, more minutes of nothing happening, increases the most boring part of the game, and I'll leave the game because all of my hard work will be invalidated with the two things I kept hearing from a lot of players. And I would really encourage those players to get on the PTR, play a ton of games. If you're Protoss, maybe wait till they fix Warpgate, because like right now the Warpgate changes are just absolutely ridiculous. But for the other two races, hop on straight away, play some games, get a feel for it, and try to remember when your instincts from 12 workers say go expand, instead go for a timing attack, or rush for mutas, or go for a drop, or do some sort of harassment. I think the reprogramming I'm doing every time I'm playing with 8 workers is go harass, go scout, go interact, don't just expand. Because all of my conditioning from the last 8, 7, 10 years of StarCraft 2 says, expand. What do you do now? Expand. If you want to tech up, but also expand at the same time. And that's what I've really got to break out of. And it's quite hard to do. And I'm sure it'll be hard for all of you as well. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this little chat. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. We're going to be updating, seeing things that happen. And we really hope they fix the Protoss Warpgate changes as quickly as possible so we can get on there and actually test Protoss matchups as well with the economy changes. See you guys next time. Goodbye and good night.